We see it all the time in teaching sports, literally from the youngest children to the varsity level. And I saw it on the varsity level the other day where we had a varsity volleyball game. The kids, these are 16 and 17-year-old kids, and literally they were rotating the wrong way. There was the pressure of the game. There was a lot of distractions. And the ref, it was a big ref too, scary ref. And this ref is saying, go to the left, go to the left. And our kids are banging against each other, going the wrong way, and starting to panic because they're losing the game.
Sally, in the Renaissance Club, beginning of the year, we carved the David by Michelangelo. And he has that pose, you know, with his hands up on his shoulder, carrying his sling. And it's very difficult to teach the children how to spin his body in space so that they can see that his left is his left as opposed to their left, and getting them to manipulate an object in space like that is very difficult.
Yes, Marguerite, you run the apprenticeship program, the internship program. Do you see this on the job where you place kids?
In the job internship program with the high school students, obviously directions are a huge issue. For example, a student we had working in a small bookstore in Georgetown, his supervisor wanted him to be able to run errands to the post office to do mailings, and he was just overwhelmed. It was only a few blocks, but he was so directionally confused. So we came in and we made up a grid of the neighborhood, and we walked it through with him, and we put, you know, showed landmarks at each corner where he would turn, and we drew lines, bright red lines that he could follow. Ignored left and right, you know, just did the real tangible pieces of the neighborhood, and then he could very successfully navigate himself there and back.
One of the things that you don't always think about is the social cost of kids who don't understand their left and the right. From the time that they start playing with other children and they have to play games, and they can't figure out which way to go around the board, or what does it mean to put something on top of something else. How do you play Twister without knowing left, right at a birthday party? Those kinds of things can be so humiliating for the kids. So those are some of the things that we will do. We'll use the games and teach the kids through the games in occupational therapy so that it's fun, but it also gives them something that they can take with them as a skill for interacting with other kids in the neighborhood.
It's my belief that the hidden dimensions of learning disabilities lie in space and in time. And that you may be a non-reader, and that is, of course, going to impact your life and make it difficult. But you are more out of society when you can't handle spatial direction, when you're always getting lost, when you're always bumping into things, that when you can't get anywhere on time and you have no sense of time, and you can't meet the demands of time. To me, this is the most crippling aspect of learning disabilities. And when we work in the night school with our adults, they will tell us how many jobs they've really had trouble with because of the demands on time and space.
In dance, time is the most important. The smallest amount of time, which is a second, which is rhythm. Kids have a hard time with rhythm. And even though they know right and left, what time do they do their right and left?
In teaching them skills on the computer, if you tell them that you perform a certain procedure by left-clicking or right-clicking, that is a very difficult instruction for them. They can do the procedure, they can learn by to perform it using the right button or the left button, but using those instructions causes a problem. So after they get it clear which button to push, they can divorce it from the word left or the word right and just learn it as a motion and a procedure rather than a verbal instruction.
We're going to suppose that our president has decided that we're going to dispense with the 24-hour day. We're going to have a day, a night, that includes 30 units. Your job is to figure out how you break up those units. When's lunch? You can name things. You don't have to have, obviously, seconds and minutes and hours. You can come up with barks and hums and singles as far as I'm concerned. Whatever it is, it's a 30-unit day. And your job is to figure out when's lunch, when do you go to school, when's supper. Okay, have you figured it out? All right, Peter, what's your 30 unit thing?
Well, what I did I used military time of 24 hours, and it's 25% more. You've gone to 30 hours. So any time you just take and multiply it by 1.25, 1.25.
Right, that's one way. Go ahead.
Well, I have my own little world. And instead of having hours, I have froggies. So for 30 units, if you divide them in half, that's your day and your night. So we have 1 through 15 for the daytime and 15 through 30 for the nighttime.
I did not do the whole day. I simply figured out what time we'd have lunch. And I said, if we have 24 hours and we have lunch at 12 o'clock, 15 hours, we have lunch at 15 hours. That's it.
Now, I have a comment about this. This made me feel like some of the students who graduate from the lab school and go to college and come back and give me their insights about what was difficult for them, and this whole idea of organizing time, because they're working in a different world, in a different time unit, in the sense that their structure is gone, which is exactly what you did to me when you took away my structure of 24 hours a day and made me try to flip into 30 units, which I couldn't do. The students have all this unstructured time at college, and they don't know what to do with it because they don't know how to organize it. They've lost the getting up at the same time every morning, going to breakfast at the same time, going to class at the same time, studying at a certain time, having reminders of what to do given the structure of their day. So I'd like to say that I now can understand why time management is so difficult for these students, because you change their world.
Good. I mean, that's what the point of the exercise is. Thank you. And the thing that we find is that the students with learning disabilities who drop out of college are the ones with the time management problem. It has to do with whether they can manage that time to get the classes on time, to get that work in on time, and how to organize their lives. It really comes down to that. Marguerite, do you want to add anything to it?
It's an issue on jobs, when the students do their internships. Time management is huge, and again, it's a different environment. It's not on a class schedule. They have to be able to manage the tasks that are given to them within a certain time frame, and so we always have to develop strategies for that.
Now I'd like to point out that when we talk to the little children, and we say, I'll be with you in a little while, it'll be just a short time, what do you think is going on in their head? Debbie?
No, they have no idea what you're talking about when you say, wait a minute. Is that an hour? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Does that mean tomorrow? Or are we still on today? And they get frustrated. I had one little boy say, minute, no minute, no minute, no minute, because he was so frustrated with, my attempts to try to get him to be patient.
Yes, all those words we use, what are they? Wait a little while, just a sec, later, oh, later.
We have a lot of terms that are very specific, like minutes and seconds, and yet we use them very generically to mean very general terms like while and moment. The students get mixed up if they are able to conceptualize what exactly a minute is. We don't help them any by not using those terms literally after we have tried to impress upon them what is a minute, what is an hour.
And you have to be incredibly specific. It's like the child that we said would go down to the other end of the pool, and he dove in and went down to the bottom of the pool. Do you remember John did that? Yeah. I mean, nobody was more surprised than these present teachers standing there watching this kid dive into the pool. Well, they said go down to the end of the pool. So the way we give directions is terribly important. With a number of very little children, we talk about there's going to just be a little time, and then something else is a long time. For example, we can put red tape on the floor, and say when you go this way, that's going in the future. When you go that way, you're going back into time. But still, that's awfully abstract, and they're very concrete and practical, but they know what cereal bowl is. They have cereal, and they eat it. So they talk to you about cereal bowls, and then you say, well, one cereal bowl, a little bit of coffee. We've got how many cereal bowls here? 3. Now, that's quite a bit of time. But at 6, cereal bowls, what do they take? A lot of time. What other things can we do? You got to cross that. You can see space. You may go the wrong way, left and right, and forward and back. But with time, it's something you can't see. Go ahead, Miranda.
For an example of time, in Cave Club, we go back a couple million years, and that's pretty difficult for the kids to understand. So in the beginning of the year, I take them out of the classroom, and we start right outside the door. And we go all the way back down the stairs, down the hall, through the castle, out into the parking lot, and around the parking lot to go all the way back to a couple million years when man began, or 4 million years. And then we go back through and we stop at each increment that's important, and then bring them all the way up to the room where we're studying the first hominins.
For older kids, the high school students, I found that using a timeline on the wall works very well, and also handing them out a calendar and pointing out this is the day that the assignment is given, and if you count off 7 days, this is the day that it's due.
As you said, these kids, time is such an abstract concept for them. So if they have a schedule that's the same every day, if they have that routine, they begin to sort of internalize that and to begin understand at the same time. Maybe not in minutes and hours, but they do know that first we have the classroom, and then we go to math, and then we go to reading, and then we go to club. And so they begin to understand, okay, before club, I have to do this. After club, I do that. But it also what happens is when we plan field trips, it also means that we have to warn them well in advance and say, on this particular day, you show to them on the calendar, you have the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On the Wednesday, instead of going to club, we are going to go and see some boats in the harbor. And we have to keep saying it to them so that they understand that, okay, there's going to be a change in what we usually do. And I think that helps them also to come to terms with, any changes in their routine and in their time structure.
Excellent point, and they really are upset by changes. By change, God help the substitute teachers. Because in many places, they just can't tolerate the change and they take it out on the teacher. Other places, they are lost all day. And when we have holidays, like the Monday holiday, well, everybody gets a little confused, but they do more so. And this is this time-space continuum that I think needs much more research done on it, because I think it's really one of the hardest deficit areas for people with learning disabilities, and that we still see a lot of in adulthood. Yes?
One thing that I try to do, Sally, in our club at least, is to organize time around things that they're very familiar with. If we're talking about long stretches of time in God's club, I line them up along the Nile, which is something that they're familiar with, and I give them a little thing to hold, something that's familiar. And so we'll organize the children with an icon of some sort, some kind of tangible thing that they can hold sequentially along the Nile, going in the proper direction of the flow of the Nile. They can use that as a sequence too. Or things like learning about the day of a Roman child. I try to keep it as close to their day, to try to relate it to their day. And we use things like food to ground them on the breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and then the rest of it can be acted out. But it's helpful to give them something that they're familiar with to grab onto.
It seems to me that time, there's two kinds of time. There's time, the o'clock time, and that's a stationary thing. It's 12 o'clock every 24 hours or every 12 hours, depending on what clock you're using. And then there's the time that you use to measure. And there's two totally different things, but we use a lot of the same language to talk about both of them.
But when you talk about using time, you are really talking abstract language, because we talk about before and after. Now they're confused by those words, before 11 o'clock, after 11 o'clock. But on top of it, we say a 9 means 45 minutes to or quarter of. We say a 3 is 15 minutes after. You've got to understand so much symbolism. At the same time, it's why kids with learning disabilities take longer to learn to tell time as well. I mean, digital watches don't help because they can wear those and not know how to tell time first. And they know it.